seminarians technically or usually don't have the luxury of telling the bishop where he wants to go to seminary. It's usually the other way around. The bishop says to the seminarian, you're going to study at this seminary, you're going to study at this seminary, you're going to study at this seminary. Well, when it came time, after my application had gone through and been processed, I was going to meet with Bishop O'Malley, Bishop Sean O'Malley, who was our bishop at the time. I was filled with trepidation. I was very scared because he's an imposing figure, and here I am, just lowly seminarian getting ready to go off to seminary somewhere. And I go to his office and I sit in front of him, and I won't do my Cardinal Sean impersonation, even though he's heard it. And he said, I would like you to study for the priesthood in Rome. And I looked at him and I said, Italy? He said, well, that's where Rome is located. I said, oh. And so I had all these questions, because I wasn't actually expecting this. I had all these questions. I said, I don't speak Italian. He said, you'll learn. I said, well, why do you want me to go there? He said, because it's important to understand the universality of the church. Every time I asked him a question, the man had an answer. So then he said, but there's one other thing that you must know. You can't come home for 2 full years. I said, well, what's the point of that? Why? He said, well, that's the seminary's rule. You need to stay and be there for 2 full years. Well, I turned to ashen. I mean, I was so scared. I didn't want to be separated from my mother and my father. My brother, I don't care about, but, I mean, just kidding. But I can't come home for 2 years. So I said, Bishop, I can't give you an answer right now. I said, can I pray about it? And he said, good answer. He said, you need to pray about this. So I got in the car. Before I even put the key in the ignition, I started to cry. I really did. I was so overwhelmed by what I had just been offered. I didn't think it was a good offer at all. Actually, I was suffering already from separation anxiety. I didn't dare tell my parents. I couldn't dare tell my mother that I had just been asked to cross an ocean and go live in a foreign country without coming home for 2 years. Well, it took about 24 hours, and I finally mustered up the courage. My mother had come home. My father had come home from work. My eyes were red. They were so blotchy. I'd been crying all day because I'm very close with my parents. I didn't want to leave the comforts of home behind. And I said, Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. My mother was looking at me, this, inquisitive, questioning frown on her face. And I said, I met with Bishop Sean yesterday. She said, oh, why didn't you tell me about it? I said, well, because I'm a little scared. She said, continue. Well, when I dropped that bombshell, needless to say, she was not very happy. But I realized that I needed to stop making it all about me. You see, I was suffering from an awful disease. The disease sometimes infects us all. It's called I-me-my-itis. Ever heard of it? It's when we focus only on ourselves. You see, when we give ourselves over to Christ, we should find peace. That's the whole point of the second reading. Paul reminds the community, nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. Not even an ocean of water. But here we gather tonight, and our hearts are filled with all kinds of emotions. We might be on the verge of losing a job. We might be in a work situation that is intolerable. We might be in a marriage that is intolerable. We might be at wit's end with our children. Children, you might be just so tired of feeling that your parents are constantly after you. Maybe our neighbors are judging us harshly. Sometimes, perhaps we don't feel accepted by our loved ones. But we must be reminded that despite all of that anguish that can come from those types of situations, nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. That's a very comforting thought if you think about it. But here's the problem. We are the ones who sever that relationship constantly. Christ doesn't. It's firmly intact by virtue of our baptism. But we pull back because we suffer from that I, me, my-itis. I can fix it. I don't need anybody to help me. I don't need God in my life. I can do it all by myself. Well, you got me on a good day, because I readily admit I can't do it by myself. I need that Christ, and that's why I gather here tonight. I gather here so that the Lord will come to me sacramentally. His body, His blood, His soul, His divinity will come to reside in me, so that the bond that we share, that the bond that you share with Christ, will be strengthened, so that as you leave here tonight, as you leave the safety of the walls of this holy place, whatever might confront you as you leave might reassure you that nothing can separate you from the love, the support, the presence of Jesus Christ.